Hey friends, welcome to 1 Minute with Monet. Balance doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen one intentional minute at a time. This podcast gives you the tools to make it happen. I'm your host Monet, your favorite concierge and founder of Time Managed LLC. Join me each week for practical tips and real examples to help you manage your lifestyle with ease. Hello and welcome to the next edition of 1 Minute with Monet. This season, we'll be discussing how do you find purpose in your passions. And in this series, our first interviewee is Soraya Wright. She is a former executive and current artist. It's great to have you here. How are you today, Soraya?
Wonderful, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to speak with you. So thank you so much.
Of course. Absolutely.
How are
Absolutely.
you?
I'm good. I'm really good. So the reason why I have this theme for this season is because I've just become an empty nester. So we just moved our son, our last child, into college over the weekend. And over the summer, I've really been thinking about this next phase of life and how I can tap into some of the things that I may not have paid much attention to in the past. Maybe because I was preoccupied with raising children or my corporate career or running a business. And so this pivotal time is just a moment for me to pause and reflect on what I should do next. Is there anything I should add? Is there anything I should do? Are there new hobbies I should explore? And I've been so inspired by watching you. As you know, we worked at Target together many years ago, and I followed your career and most recently have followed your artistry. So that is why we're here. That's how I'm feeling, all in a nutshell.
Thank you for your kind words. You know what? I'm having fun. I'm just really enjoying life.
That's good. And we all should. We absolutely should. So tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
I will, but first I want to congratulate you on becoming an empty nester. I mean, to raise your children and, and send your youngest to college. I mean, congratulations and job well done, you and your husband, because it's not easy, right? And
It's not
it takes
easy.
a lot of work and dedication and planning. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank
They
you
are
so
our
much.
future leaders.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm glad that we made it. So I'm glad that we made it. So you can go into telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I am a retired executive. I was a risk management professional. And in that role, I provided strategic advice to CEOs in the C-suite on how to navigate and manage the business, grow the business, and balance between growing their businesses and managing risk. And I had the opportunity to work for companies, global companies like the Clorox Company, Target, and Amazon. I also started a risk management consulting practice, and it's still active today, which I am planning to wind down very, very soon. But there's no shortage of opportunities, so that's why I've had this consulting practice, and then I'm also had the opportunity to serve on a corporate board, the Beasley Insurance Company, Inc. They're a specialty insurance company that focuses on executive risk and cyber and things like that. And I'm currently a commissioner. I'm a California state commissioner serving on the Fraud Assessment Commission. But
I did not
I'm
know that.
retired from corporate.
Okay.
Yeah, so enjoying retirement life. And there's just so many opportunities following what I'll call corporate retirement. And so now I am enjoying being an artist. And I think, I've been an artist all my life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And did you always make time and have the space to create your art?
No, I sewed all my clothes and made all my clothes from the time I was like in middle school all the way through college. And once I started focusing on my career, there was just less time to sew. So I took a long hiatus, and I still had that old machine. And throughout my career, I was building the career and raising a family at the same time. So one of the things I gave up was my hobby, sewing. And yeah, I'm just trying to think. But I had other creative outlets. And I'm not sure if you know this, but I had a wedding cake business. So I'm a cake decorator.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we can go into that. That was one of my side hustles when my oldest daughter started college, and we were paying for college. And it's like, okay, how can I make up some more money? And I've been a baker all my life too. And then I took a cake decorating course, and the one of the first customers I had was a minister's son got married, and I made the wedding cake. And when you have a minister's son and all the ministers and the ministers, the first ladies and all of that stuff show up, and then they, oh, let me have your card. Let me have your card. And at that time,
Yeah.
I didn't have cards, but I ended up having a wedding cake business for almost 10 years. And again, as my career continued to progress, I had less time to do that. So now I just decorate for our family and home parties and holidays and things like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. Nice, nice. And so with your sewing, that has involved into quilting. Have you always quilted? And when did you get back into quilting?
I got into quilting during COVID, and, I mean, we were at home, right? So, and I started out by making masks. A friend of mine was making masks and selling them, and she asked me if I could help her. She had a large order. So I said, okay, I'll help you, but I'm not selling anything. I can just help you. And then I just said, I'm gonna make a quilt. Why not? And it just took off from there. I've just haven't been having a ball making quilts. I have 4 quilts that my great grandmother made. And that was really the inspiration behind starting quilting.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so I've been
Is your
quilting
grandmother
since.
the one who taught you how?
Well, my grandmother taught me how to sew.
Mm.
My father's mother, but my great grandmother made the quilts.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are pretty old, and I did not have an opportunity to quilt with her.
Hmm.
She was in Texas, and I born and raised here in California, so we never had the opportunity to quilt together. But as a young girl, I started crocheting, and I remember making her a hat and sending it to her, and
Hmm.
she was so happy to have this little cap that I made.
Uh-huh. I'm sure she loved that. I'm sure she loved that. I remember, so I sew also. And when I was younger, my mom tried to get me to sew, and I did not want to because she would always make me cut out the patterns, which is like the worst job ever. And I was on internship in San Francisco by myself. My daughter was maybe around 18 months, and she stayed back in Tallahassee with my husband, and I didn't really have anything to do. And so I bought a sewing machine and I started sewing. And my mom was so happy. And she has since passed, but I read in one of her journals about she wrote about one of the dresses that I made and how happy I was. And she was giving me praise about how good of a job that I did. So that made me feel really good. So even though I didn't take her up on teaching me when I was younger, I eventually did kind of teach myself. And of course, being by her side when she was sewing, picked up on some things. And so it brought joy to me that she was also happy for me in that moment.
Awesome. What a great story, right? And just knowing that your mom was so happy that you picked this
Mhm.
up. And
Yeah.
so, no, that's wonderful. And it's a
Mhm.
skill that, you can use forever and do so many
Exactly.
things with it.
Mhm.
I use sewing that was my side hustle when I was when I wasn't making as much money. I'm like, it's always having some type of side hustle. So I restored wedding gowns. I made clothes for proms, and
Wow.
it was really more of, at one point, from making my own clothes to making money. And I have
Mhm.
to admit, I just, when I thought about, okay, where could I work part-time while I was in school? And I just didn't wanna work for anybody at that time. So
Yeah, you have to be resourceful, when you have when you have ideas. You talked about sending your daughter to college, your little side hustle when you wanted some extra money, you didn't want to work. So being having these skills allows you to be resourceful and think of creative ways to make money, fulfill your dreams, and whatever you need, you can kind of make happen through using your skills.
right, right.
Mhm.
And designing things for you, like having unique items, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Because when you look at some of the stores, especially some of the big retailers, mass retailers, everything kind of looks the same. And, you have to dress it up by accessorizing or, putting different things together, maybe from different places. But when you are designing and making your own clothes, you don't have to worry about any of that.
Right. And I just love when someone says, "Ooh, that's beautiful. Where did you get it?" "I made it." It's like,
Uh,
I've even had people ask me, "You do you what pattern that you use?" I'm like, Well, I used a basic pattern, but I changed it. I
Uh-huh.
added my own embellishment. And I think
Right.
that's the creative side, right? And I
Hmm.
think, if you're a creative and you're been creative all your life, you just know how to make things or design things and put things together.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's what I
Yeah.
love about being an artist.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I do think there's some level of problem solving that goes along with that. And it doesn't surprise me that you've been so successful in your corporate career, but then also a successful artist because there are some elements that are transferable between both your corporate career and sewing. Because everything does not happen perfectly in sewing. You you have to, it's trial and error sometimes. Sometimes you mess up, you have to go back and fix it. But when your product is done, it's something that you can sit back and be really proud of, just like things that you may have accomplished in your career.
Right. And you're
Mhm.
so true, and especially in the career that I had in risk management, it's like you're constantly working in gray and you're trying to determine what is the problem you want to solve and then how do you solve it. It's the same thing with creating, whether it's a quilt or, a clothing item. I just recently made a kimono and I just knew in my head what I wanted it to look like and I knew what type of fabric I wanted to use, and it took a minute to find the fabric. But once you start putting those pieces together, and then you come out with a product that brings you joy or that you're really satisfied with. Same
Yeah.
thing in corporate, a lot of the issues, and I managed a lot of like global risk issues. And many of them you have no idea what the total impact of a risk could be, but then building the strategies around how do you fix it or how do you mitigate them. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And I do think the creative side is what enabled me to be a great risk manager. It's just
Yeah,
having those
absolutely.
skills.
So tell me more about your quilting. You were recently featured here in Atlanta at an art center. Can you tell me more about that project?
Yes, yes. I learned about the Atlanta Quilt Festival when I was visiting my daughter who lived in Atlanta at the time. And I was just so inspired by all of these. Well, first of all, I was seeking what I'll call a quilt tribe. And it was
Okay.
so nice to find a quilt tribe of Black women. And many of them are retired professionals. The person who launched it, started this, founded this, the Atlanta Quilt Festival, is a retired attorney, and her
Okay.
work is beautiful. And so I started going every year to take classes, and more than that, just to fellowship with these brilliant women. And so I said, let me just enter something. I started long arming. Long arming is putting the quilt top together with the backing and then stitching it together.
Hmm.
And I had just bought a long arm and I said, let me just put this together and submitted it. And I won first prize in the art category.
Wow.
So the first time I submitted a piece of art or a quilt to a festival and won first prize. And it just brought me to tears. I literally cried when I received the call that I won. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's so amazing.
yeah. And then more recently, I was reached out. The Friends School of San Francisco commissioned me to quilt their new logo. So I created a quilt out of the new logo and just completed that project. So I feel very fortunate to be a new artist and have already won a jury quilt, prize and have been selected to make a piece for a school that's been around for years. And the the third piece that I'm not sure you may have read, but I was part of an exhibit at the Cooper Hewitt Museum in New York. And that wasn't a quilt, but it's fiber art. I was invited by an upholsterer, Nicole Crowder, to join her and be in her team for an exhibit. So 3 pieces of my work, and I'm just starting. So I'm like, oh my gosh, let me knock on something and hope that this journey.
Yes, that is so exciting though. 'Cause I'm sure you didn't dream of this. You didn't think that all this would happen, but you tapping back into your creativity and seeking out the right opportunities led you to some of these bigger things that you could have, you probably did not imagine.
Had no idea, but very flattered, honored, and, and just appreciate the opportunity and the recognition. And it
Hmm.
gives me I'm inspired to do more. And I'm not doing this to market or sell anything. I do it because I love it.
Right.
But I'm also treating this like I did my career, where it is about, how do I build a network? And that was what I think it, really contributed to me having a successful career was the networking, right? And seeking to learn and surrounding myself with others who were doing the same thing or things that I wanted to achieve.
Hmm.
And so while this is still fairly new for me, I feel very fortunate that I've been able to accomplish some of the things that I have so far.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that has been amazing. Now, it sounds like you're being very intentional now and throughout this process that you're working through your artistry and your creative outlets. How do you define your purpose now, and how has that definition evolved?
So my purpose has always been about helping others realize their potential and their dreams. And that's been like again for forever. And it's because I was one of those I was a kid who had no idea what I would do or would be able to even go to college because, we didn't have the resources. And so through mentorships and programs like nonprofit organizations and my involvement in some of those, I then learned that there were resources to go to school. And I had
Hmm.
mentors and people who were able to encourage me in a way that my family couldn't, because they didn't have the experiences. So I always pledged back that, I'm going to help someone else, because I've been so fortunate that folks poured into me. So let me continue to do that for others. And I did that during my career. I still coach and mentor and sponsor professionals. And
Hmm.
now I'm, leading a scholarship endowment program, so helping college students through scholarships. So my purpose has, I would say, it hasn't changed. It continued to evolve. Where I'm like figuring out, okay, what more can I do, and how can I
Hmm.
leverage my experience and my connections to continue to do more. And so that's what it's about. It's about helping folks realize their potential and doing whatever I can to support that. Because the more we do that, we're building legacies, right? And changing,
Absolutely.
impacting lives. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. And that's what I focus on. And that's my priority, which means other things come up, but if it doesn't fit what I'm focused on, then it's easy for me to walk away. And I
Yes.
think disciplined is important, especially, where you are and you're at that point where what's your next. And I think once you know what your next is, or as you're figuring it out, focus on that. Because it's so easy
Hmm.
to get distracted and do like 100 million things. And for me, I want to do just a few things very well than a lot of things, so that's what I'm doing. And I try to practice that discipline every day.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, that resonated with me so well because I can relate to it in a way that I feel like I'm talented in anything that I want to do. I can do, but that doesn't mean I should do it. So I have to think about the things that really will bring me joy. What am I passionate about? How do I want to give back to the community and focus on those things? So instead of doing all the things that I'm certainly can do because I am talented, doesn't mean that I should devote all of my energy and attention to all of those things, but really be intentional about what it is that I want to do.
Right, right. I mean, and
Mhm.
there's always going to be something to pull you back to something that you're comfortable with, right?
Mhm.
There's so many opportunities, especially now in risk management. And I'm like, no, I want to help others. I've been helping companies for all of these years. And now I'm helping
Mhm.
individuals. And quite frankly, I'm helping my folks. So, so
I
that's
love
my
it.
passion.
Yes,
And yeah,
yes, yes.
yeah.
What would you say to a woman who is kind of at a crossroad like me, but sometimes we might feel that they don't have permission to pursue that passion later in life, or maybe they feel like it's too late? what advice would you give that woman to say that it's okay to say yes?
You know what? It's that's easier said than done, but just do it,
Hmm.
right? It's easier said than done. But guess what? No, if you know your value and your worth, go for it. No one can tell you that but yourself, right? So I would say take that leap. Take the leap of faith and believe in yourself. Bet on yourself.
Hmm.
Once you do that, then there's no stopping. There's just no stopping. Trust yourself,
Yes,
trust your
trust yourself.
capabilities.
Mm.
Trust what you've been doing. Look at everything that you've done in the past and all the skills and what's in common, right? You know how to do things. You know how to get things done. So give yourself permission to explore.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank you for those words. And then on raising children, so you have, is it two girls?
2 daughters.
Two daughters? Yes. They're not girls, they're women, they're grown women.
No,
I've had the privilege of getting to know Danya. How has it been raising them? And I know Danya's an artist. She actually made something for me before she left Atlanta, and I'm so appreciative of that. How was it raising children, moving into a phase of more consulting versus true parenting and letting them tap into their desires and their talent?
Yeah, yeah. That's a good question. And there's no book that tells us how to be parents and how to raise kids, right? So
Hmm.
we're learning as we go. And so the way I thought about it or approached it is like, we give them the tools. We give them the tools, we give them the exposure and try to provide, everything that they need to figure it out on their own because they need to do what they and grow the way they want to grow and be
Hmm.
who they want to be. And as a parent, we support that. And so, my husband and I are like, okay, let's just make sure we give them everything that they need, but not tell them what to do. And if
Yeah.
and when they come to us for advice, be neutral. Don't say, "Oh, you need to do this." It's about here are your options. And quite frankly, I
Yes.
treat it like I did the CEOs of companies I represent. I treat it like a risk management problem. Here are your
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
options. Here are the advantages and disadvantages of each, and you make the decision. The
Yep.
one thing that I was adamant about, and I recommend to everyone, is always set goals and run you. Your business is you and what you want to achieve. Run it like a corporation. Build a strategy. Develop and execute strategies to achieve your goals. And if you
Mhm.
do that year over year, and pretty soon you have a book and you can see where you started and what you've accomplished year over year. But have
Mhm.
that mindset. I mean, even now, I'm post corporate retirement, but I still have goals and I have a strategy to get
Yeah.
me where I want to be as an artist, right? And not only as an artist, where I want to be in terms of my finances and creating options for myself. So that's the approach that I took because we don't want to tell our children what to do. We
Yeah.
want to give them the tools to help themselves.
Right, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Well, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. I would love for my audience to be able to follow you and find where they can see where they can find your artwork. Do you have social media? Where can we find your work?
Yeah, my work is I'm on Instagram. It's Royas, Royas underscore So Lounge and on Instagram. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, Soraya Wright. There are actually two Soraya M. Wrights,
Oh,
believe it or
really?
not. But my picture is there, so you can follow me those two places.
Awesome. Well, continue to keep me posted on where we can find your next artwork, whether it's quilting or otherwise, and I'll continue to stay in touch. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a wonderful conversation. I was inspired, and I hope my audience was too. And so until next time, be well and be balanced.
Thank you so much. And, wishing you an abundance of blessings for you and
Thank
your
you.
family. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me this week. Let's continue the conversation on social media at 1 Minute with Monet on all channels. Also, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Until next time, be well and be balanced.